Thanks. Go ahead, Gary.
As a resident of Southern Village, I'm very familiar with the Opie Creek situation. As a matter of fact, tomorrow they're having a community get-together to take a look at the proposals that they made last week. Roger Perry made a proposal last week, Monday, and somebody from town, Victor, came back and says, I could improve upon the committee's concerns. At the end of that meeting, they were pretty much happy with what the result, and they are preparing it to present it to the mayor and the town council for the review, but it's not a final say. At the hearing, when it does approach town council, I'm sure a lot of members are going to express their favor of it or disapproval of it. I personally am in favor of the current plan that they proposed.
Okay, let's go to Lauren here.
In terms of big box stores, I mean, I think it's very important to buy local, and I think the town already does offer a lot of retail opportunities. I have major problems with companies such as Walmart just because the treatment for workers and the sprawl that they create. The specific to Opie Creek development is historically that area has been zoned for lower density because of environmental issues and because of the agreement for Southern Village. So I'd like to see very carefully the proposed plan and see if I would support it.
Okay, and Ed.
Well, I chaired the council meeting last November 5th when the council came up with the two-stage process for Opie Creek that Sally mentioned. Out of that came the Opie Creek Compass Committee, and right now that committee is working away along with a technical team, with facilitator Ken Brown, and with the development team to come up with something that appears to work for everyone. We don't know what that is. It will probably have some large buildings in it. I say we can have destination retail that isn't big, and the best example around here is Trader Joe's.
Okay, thank you. Hold on to the mic, Ed. We'll start with you next. In earlier forums, all of you have stated you have a personal sense of commitment to the people of the Rogers Road community. How and when do you plan to translate that into action? How and when can we get them a part of the extraterritorial jurisdiction they need to be a part of for water services to be delivered to that community?
Well, the first hearing should be on the 21st.
Okay.
You want more?
Well,
I mean, and it's
tell us what you see
at the
the process
advice
being.
of the town attorney and meeting with other attorneys with the county and Carrboro is that that's the path that Chapel Hill ought to pursue. We're still allowed to do it by the State General Assembly, still.
And as it continues, tell us whether or not you would vote for this.
I'm one of the people that asked to
Okay, well
get
that,
explored, yes.
not everybody may know.
Yeah, 9 of us did, yeah.
Okay, great. And Sally, you have any comments on the same subject?
Sure. I also voted to go through this process of asking the county for extraterritorial jurisdiction, which would make it legally very possible for us to extend the water and sewer.
Okay, George, you have any comments on that?
Well, I didn't get to vote because I wasn't on council at the time, but I would have voted where I am.
DC?
I would support the ETJ and work hard to make sure Rogers Road is served as it should be.
Thank you. And Amy?
I agree. I'd support the ETJ.
Okie dokie. Maria?
I support the ETJ, and I would like to add that I have been endorsed by Minister Campbell. So I'm very proud to work with him and with the Rogers Road community.
Thank you. And moving on.
As one person who experienced what actually went on with the Rogers Road, I support it, and as like my current incumbents are.
Okay. And Lauren?
I also support the ETJ.
Okay, terrific. This time we're going to start with DC. And we've got a couple of questions I think we can combine into perhaps one and maybe give everybody 60 seconds on this. How should the town make up for the loss of the tax base due to expansions of UNC Hospital? The next questioner points out growth is good, but how do you plan to deal with the fallout, like the need for new roads, schools, water, sewer, transportation? Where will the money for this come from? So we have a diminishing tax base and needs for new things that will require more money.
Okay. Well, I certainly think we need to find a way to restore that tax base by bringing in new industries, as I mentioned, various, looking for industries such as, or green technology-based industries, or just general retail. I think that's really important. In terms of growth, infrastructure is very costly, and I certainly understand that, and that's why we don't need to deal with urban sprawl. That's what forces us to have to expand our systems in the first place. If we increase our density, then we diminish the need for the amount of costs we have to supply in regard to development in Chapel Hill. And I would much rather see us building up and in within us than building out and having to take away the green space we have around the town.
Okay, Amy?
I think as far as the loss of the tax base goes, I know that there's ways, if UNC moves away from campus and moves into regular office space in town, if they're renters, we still get the property tax. So I think that we need to encourage those kind of relationships to keep going. And I think the good news about being a very built-up town is when we do infill development, a lot of that infrastructure is already in place, so we're not actually running new water and sewer lines for these developments. And when developers come in there, the town generally expects them, if there are road improvements are needed or sidewalks, they're expected to pay for them. So I think that helps offset those costs of development.
All righty, Maria?
I think we need to push UNC and UNC hospitals to do much more than they're doing for the people they employ. For example, we're subsidizing their employees because 60% of our public housing residents work for UNC but just don't make enough money to pay rent or to buy a house. So the university needs to provide housing for its lowest paid employees, and perhaps at Carolina North through some type of community home trust or something like that. We need to, I feel like UNC can be a big bully sometimes and push the town around. And I think we did a good job getting concessions at Carolina North. We need to continue that collaboration. And there are really good people at UNC, and I'm hoping this new chancellor will do more to provide for the safety that DC has been calling for, to do a lot of things that the town shouldn't do alone.
Gary?
I fell asleep. Can you
Yes.
repeat the question?
We're talking about growth, and where did I put my little cards? Growth is good, but how do you plan to deal with the fallout, which is a need for money to build roads, schools, water, sewer, transportation, and with the loss of a tax base as UNC hospitals expands, and you can just say as UNC itself expands, how can we juggle these two things, the loss of tax base and an increased need for funds for town infrastructure?
Okay, that's
That
kind of
makes
like two parts to that.
Yes, it is, and it's okay. You got
Okay,
it.
that's why I had to ask it again.
That's okay, I understand.
Okay. First thing is, I like to go back to the priority budgeting. I think each item should be taken one at a step at a time, line by line. And again, encourage to have retail in the area, commercial space, and possibly some housing thrown in to help support the property for the town. But I'm against increasing any taxes as far as having that accomplished.
Okay, Lauren?
In terms of UNC, although there's a loss of property, in some cases, the university can help pay for services, like currently they do support the fire department and through student fees, the transportation. I think we should urge UNC Hospital to also consider contributing to some of the transportation costs since their employees use it. For new things, as much as possible, we should request or require, as much as possible, require the developer to put in sidewalks and things of that nature. And I know in Fordham, Ephesus Church Fordham, there's a plan to put in stormwater and other things and then get a payback as the development occurs.
Okay, thank you. Ed?
Well, I would always rather have private development because the taxation is more direct than what we have with UNC. Folks may not know UNC healthcare sometimes is actually paying full property tax on the property. I was actually the first council member to have asked about that about 10 years ago. In some cases, they're doing, as does Carolwood's, for instance, payments in lieu to the town. and a lot of the university property, large amounts of it, are not taxable at all. They do, as Lauren and others have pointed out, put a lot of funds into certain things in town, for instance, transit, and get a lot of transit back. One thing to keep in mind, if there is a large UNC expansion, it could qualify for a development agreement, as did Carolina North. And there's really no telling what you negotiate out of that. We could get some very interesting taxation agreements out of that. And the next place that could happen, if UNC moves there, is the Blue Cross property. We don't know what's going to happen there.
Okay, and Sally?
Yeah, I think Ed was right to point out that UNC is a very complicated player, and we sometimes do get tax benefits and other benefits from them. I'd also mentioned the redevelopment of University Square that UNC is going to be responsible for. I was just saying that UNC is a complicated actor in our development scenario, and sometimes we do get tax benefits and other benefits from what they do. And I mentioned University Square, which is going to be redeveloped, and that's owned by the UNC Foundation and will be fully tax-paying when it's redeveloped. Nevertheless, property can change hands overnight, but what the town can do in response does not happen overnight. So I think that the question just puts a point of urgency on the efforts that we've all been talking about trying to find ways to increase the commercial non-residential tax base. As to how to pay for growth, I think Maria made a good point about engaging in discussions with UNC, and the council tomorrow night is going to hear a draft of an affordable rental housing strategy, and one of the items on there is that we should really enter into deliberate conversations to ask UNC if they will help provide housing for their own workers.
Terrific. George?
We have a very symbiotic relationship with UNC, and I think it's one that we need to continue to work to strengthen as we go along. As UNC prospers, we prosper, and vice versa. I think property that they have, we need to, if it's taken off the tax rolls, we need to work with them to try to make some arrangements. Ed mentioned the Blue Cross Blue Shield site. I'd hate to see that go to UNC because I think that's a perfect site for some large mixed-use development that can really benefit the town and is an ideal situation right next to I-40. In terms of the cost of development, I think a good example, or first of all, we're 95% built out. We aren't going to be building a lot of new roads and such. In most development, we get sidewalks and other things. I think a good example is to look at Greenbridge. If we look at the tax valuation of University Mall, it's $900,000 per acre. Greenbridge has a tax valuation of $52 million per acre. When you go up, you get a lot of value, and it didn't cost us new streets and new sidewalks.
Okay, great. This is a very specific question, and let's start with Sally and go back the other way. What is your position on turning Meadowbrook Lane into a major connector to Durham? Is it? What's the name of it?
Meadowmont.
Okay, this says Meadowbrook, but Meadowmont Lane into a major connector to Durham.
This is an issue that is still under consideration by the council, and we have not made a final decision about that, and my own thoughts are still under deliberation.
Okay, Ed?
How much do you want to know? Okay. Actually, it's not under consideration by the council anymore. The Metropolitan Planning Organization for the region took it off the plan out of print last year. Mark Kleinsmith cast the vote for that. I would have been there to cast it instead. I've been working on it with Meadowmont neighbors and others for 7 years, and what it finally came to is it is too expensive. If there is a private developer who builds it on the other side in future city of Durham, it's too expensive to pay for a bridge
Okay.
to make it happen. But yeah, it's a settled issue now.